How about that? It's great. You know, every one of you here, and I've seen so many of the concerts, and you're all just so magnificent. And just another art form or something that I think to add to what you do, either as you're here or as you move on, everybody has to play every style, and this is a great example of jazz. These are some of the best musicians on the planet, and I'm just so thrilled that they're here. And they're all good friends as well. Well, some of them are good friends, and others are not so much. So anyway, what we're doing today, this is a jam session. And so I think Rob, we had talked, or at least kind of thought alike, maybe kind of going through the different styles of jazz, maybe starting at the very beginning and going through the different eras of it so you kind of understand what's going on. So I thought, I don't know how we want to do this, but I thought let's go back like to the earliest, like Dixieland, kind of. Anybody heard of Dixieland at all? Okay, those of you guys, people with some straw hats back there, that's good, so it's perfect. So we're going to do a Dixieland tune, and in the old days of Dixieland, they didn't have like a lot of fancy chords like, you know, like this or whatever, and that's not even a fancy chord. That's a fancy chord. What do you think of this, Mike? That's fancy? Okay. All right, we're going to do a Dixieland tune. And the Dixieland era was probably like from the 1920s, probably through the 30s. There's bands that still play it today. And but this is a tune called Back Home Again in Indiana. And this is kind of where jazz kind of first started, very, very simple. We'll try and play simple. Mike, can you play simple? No? Okay. This is called Back Home Again in Indiana. And it was very nice of you at the end of each solo that you clap, because that's kind of a nice thing to do. And but you never clap for the bass. That's when they order food and you talk, and that's, yeah, mix the drinks. That's when they turn the blender on. When bass solo, they turn the blender on. So. Yeah. Rob's back at Disneyland again.
Tom, if I could make a comment.
Please make comment.
Something I observed, which I loved, is there was a group of students back in the corner that were, you were just shaking and moving a little bit at one point in that tune. And I guarantee you, most or all of you have never heard that song before. But there's something about that particular style in the 20s and 30s, that more angular ragtime kind of style that is infectious and kind of reflected the time of our country, the Roaring 20s, vaudeville, Flapper Girls, the Charleston, all that cool, fun party stuff that was going on in the early 20s before the Depression hit. And I thought that was really cool that you felt that and you were tapping your toes and moving around a little bit. That's kind of really the neat thing about that style of music.
It was a kind of a style more of some of the things that we, like even from that first tune, it was kind of more melodic. It was kind of the lines that we were playing were things that were, you could almost hum, you could, or sing or whatever. By the way, we're improvising. We're just kind of making stuff up as we go along, which is pretty much our life. That's right. Thank you very much, Gordon. Actually, this is the first time as a group, we've ever played together. So there's like little hand signals and pointing and looking and hoping that we all kind of get to the right place at the same time. So you want to move up another notch as far as what's that?
I want to say in that music.
Got you covered, Mike.
Mike's got a mic.
Okay, in the trad music, this wasn't even invented yet. The telly, so it'd be more like a big Epiphone Broadway, like 1934, 1930, big box that probably wasn't even mic'd. It just was very loud, and the role of the guitar player was just to lay the 2 and 4 thing down, I have my classical guitar here, but I was trying to mute the strings, but you just really can't do it on here because it's still electric guitar. But if it was, you can hear what I'm doing. I'll show you. Like this kind of thing. Most of those guys back then, before probably Charlie Christian or maybe Django Reinhardt, they didn't really solo that much because it wasn't a loud instrument. The instrument back then that was really prominent was the banjo because it was louder and you could hear it more. The guitar didn't come into prominence until probably the 30s when the amplifier was invented. So it's interesting to play it on this. It doesn't feel right to me. I need a big they call it big box, big guitar with big strings so it cuts, You don't really need a microphone with it, but it sounds cool when you do, Mike.
How many guitars do you have, actually?
I don't know. Maybe, how many do I have, Rick? Maybe 60 or something like that.
60 or so.
70.
Like everybody, I'm sure, has.
And they're all
guitars.
different. They're all from different eras, and they're all. I have some real old ones, and I have some new ones, and I have some banjos from like 20s and 30s, and then I have some guitars that are really cool,
Do you have a red one?
What's that, Rocket Man?
Do you have a red one?
I do have a red one.
That's all we're interested in is the color, actually.
Anyhow, thanks.
Yeah.
Mike did bring up a good point, though, about the banjo. There's a few other instruments up here that weren't as common in some of the early Dixieland
The Nord.
bands. The what?
Nord wasn't
Yeah, that wasn't very common. It was
No.
tough to march around the French
No,
Quarter.
there were Nordish people, but there were not.
But yeah, the banjo was a very accepted instrument at that time, and a lot of times the upright string bass wasn't around. It was a tuba or a sousaphone, and not even a drum set. It was just a marching snare and cymbal, and maybe a second drummer that played a bass drum. And trumpet was really the prominent melody instrument. Clarinet and trombone as well. Saxophone really not as much in some of the early Dixie bands. Sax didn't really have a strong presence until more of the swing era in the 30s.
Yeah.
I once saw this payroll slip from Paul Whiteman. You probably don't know who Paul Whiteman was, but if you look him up, he was like the Michael Jackson of the 1920s, 28, 29. He was huge. But the payroll thing, they had 3 banjo players on it. This would crack me up. the banjo players were making $350 a week, and Bix Beiderbecke, who was this huge icon, was making $250 a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're playing trumpet.
That's the last time
Banjo
that ever
players were
happened.
making more than he was. What happened? Huh? Anyhow, yeah, you should look up him. Paul Whiteman. You know, was huge back then.
After the Dixieland era, some of the musicians decided that it was a little more important that instead of playing like really simple chords like triads, to actually try some little more complex harmonies and at least make the beat go a little different too as well. And so they came up with, which was kind of in the 30s, I would suspect, the swing era. And we got a swing era tune should we do here in that genre? You want to do In the Mood? No. No, let's not do In the Mood. Yeah, let's do that.
Is that too mellow?
No. In the mellow tone. This is an old Duke Ellington tune.
Why is it an old Duke Ellington?
Because there are no new Duke Ellington tunes. You have to have a few beers, and it's much better, funnier when we do that. But no, we don't want you to do that. I want to. Could you erase that off the tape here? Anyway, this is a tune called In Mellow Tone. So at this point, at least from my end of it, instead of going, which is just playing arpeggios, the piano player tended to play more, and everybody did a different kind of a thing on their instruments. The piano player tended to play more kind of block chord kind of thing and more what they call accompaniment, or they changed it to comping. And so, it had a different style from the old days. I didn't do that anymore. And I was old enough. When I was playing in a Dixieland band when I was going to Huntington Beach High School. I graduated in '69 here, and there were a lot of guys left over from the 1920s, and there was this big fight. You don't see it anymore because everybody's gone, but there was this big fight between the people of the swing era who hated the people of the Dixieland era, and then the people of the Dixieland era hated the people of the swing era, and so this was just like this feud that was constantly going on, which has now ended for sure. But we're going to do In a Mellow Tone, Duke Ellington. A flat or?
Yes.
Okay. Want to take the pickup? Yeah.
1, 2,
mellow tone. Wow. Yeah. I forgot to do this in front, but if you have any questions for anybody, and that's always a funny thing because everybody goes, "What do I say?" Does anybody have any questions for anybody up to this point? How about a good question for Mike Higgins? No. You can just blurt it out. How about a question for Rob Verdi?
There's a question over there. Camera girl over there. Camera person.
Oh, yeah.
What's it like playing with instruments not having any vocals back
Actually, the funny part about musicians, and a lot of times it's kind of in some ways from when I grew up, it was kind of like a kind of a man's world, and the women just they just had them up there every once in a while to sing and stuff like that. But it's the vocalist is extremely important, and so that's a great way to do this. We're going to feature our vocalist, Miss Nicole Kubis, who's going to come up here and sing. And it's fun. It's a good question because what it does for us is a lot of times it takes the pressure off of us. Is that we don't have to. It's hard for us to communicate with you. We're going like that. We're playing like this, and so a lot of times people are going, "Wow, what are they doing up there?" It's very peculiar and whatever. But they don't hear any words, and it's very important for people to hear words. And so that's why we have. And it's always been the vocalists. Vocalists have been on bands from the very beginning. So.
But there are also a lot of instrumental hits back then too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the old days there were both, and there's that not so much anymore because there were instrumental hits like "In the Mood," and then everything.
Play a little of "In the Mood" so they know what that is.
Oh, yeah. That's enough, I think. That would be fine.
But what I love about a vocalist, as Tom alluded to, the lyrics. I mean, some of those, Gershwin, Porter, some of those writers they were poets. I mean, they told beautiful stories. And even though we can do a really nice instrumental interpretation of a song, it just comes to life when you get to hear the story. I think it's beautiful. So the vocalist really does bring it out. And I think from an audience standpoint too, I think a lot of people really like to hear the lyrics, no matter what style of music you're listening to. So,
I was told once that the lyrics are the bridge between the musicians and the audience, because a lot of people may not understand everything that's going on with all the improvising and stuff like that, and so lyrics are a nice bridge for just a common ear listening to music to kind of translate what's going on.
Did you want to translate something?
Let's translate. I'm ready. What are we translating?
Well, we could do. You want to do Route 66?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I think it's C.
It is C.
It is C. All right. Let's not.
No. Yeah?
Yeah. You want to count it?
Intro?
We'll do a little 4-bar intro.
Okay. Cool.
G, F, C.
All right. One, two.
Got it.
1, 2, 3. Well, if you ever plan to go to West, travel my way, take the highway, that's the best. Why don't you get your kicks on Route 66? Well, it winds from Chicago to LA, more than 2,000 miles all the way. Why don't you get your kicks on Route 66? Now you go through St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, Oklahoma City's looking mighty pretty. See Amarillo, Mexico. Flagstaff, Arizona, don't forget Winona, Kingman, Buster, San Bernardino. Won't you get here for this time, Lita? When you make that California trip, why don't you get your kicks on Route 66? Take it up. That's the best. Why don't you get your kicks on Route 66? Don't you know that it winds from Chicago to LA? More than 2,000 miles all the way. Why don't you get your kicks on Route 66? Oklahoma City's looking mighty pretty. You see Amarillo and Gallup, New Mexico. Flagstaff, Arizona, don't forget Winona, Kingman, Buster, San Bernardino. Won't you get here for this time, please? When you make that California trip, why don't you get your kicks on Route 66? Why don't you get your kicks on Route 66? Come on and get your kicks on Route 66.
You want to see Nightingale with Mike, maybe? Sure. Yeah. We're gonna. Nicole sings, as you know, she sings a bunch of different styles, and we're gonna do a ballad and feature the incredible Mike Higgins on his guitar. Oh, well, we could help you on that.
I will say this style of singing is very different than the pop thing for several reasons. Because I grew up I mean, I grew up singing this music as well, but I also, like you guys, we learn everything exactly the way the original artist learned it, right? And you don't stray away from that. That's what we learn in this program. The fun thing about jazz is I sing that song completely differently every time I sing it. I never know what I'm going to do when I get up there. I don't know if I'm going to go for a high note or if my voice is tired. I don't have to. You know what I mean? Can you imagine if you had to sing Runaway, right? And you're like, oh, I think I'm just going to not do that today, right? That's how jazz is cool, because you can change it up, as with these guys, right? They're going to play a different solo every single time. So that's kind of fun. Also, the song form is a little different, and they'll talk to you about that as well. You can come back in at the beginning of the song, or you might come back in at the middle of the song. It depends on the song and kind of... There's standard ways to learn this stuff, and you just have to do it to know it.
Yeah, I think most everybody who has done this learns on a gig, on a job, and then they look at you funny if you don't come in. And then, or they'll point at you. They'll do something like that. And that's about as much rehearsal as we usually do. Your turn, play. You know, that kind of thing. And so it's hard sometimes for the vocalists to know the exact form of the tune. Like, this is a 32-bar tune, and some aren't. Some are 16, some are 12. And as a working musician, you're supposed to know all those things when you do it. So, and this one... This particular tune, this is called A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square. It's an absolutely beautiful tune. And it's a 32-bar tune, but we kind of break it up, and it's been kind of reharmonized and all kinds of crazy stuff. So we're going to attempt to get through this, and we'll see what happens. Let's see who wins.
Yeah, right? I will also say, for those of you who have had to stand up there doing an awkward guitar solo, welcome to my life. Because I'm standing up here while they do a solo, while they do a solo, while they do a solo, and you all look at me like, what do I do while the guitar player is playing? Just look natural, or look at the soloist. These are things that I've had to learn because it's totally different than, or you can kind of anticipate when you know the recorded version, you're like, oh, okay, well, solo's almost over, so I'm good. But here, you never know what they're going to do, so you just have to go with it. So it's very different in that way. I know, right? So you never know what's going to happen, and it's fun and scary at the same time, so... Anyways, here we go, Mike, and that's jazz. Mike and I are going to do this, no rehearsal.
That certain night, the night we met, there was magic abroad in the air. There were angels dining at the Ritz, and a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. That as you turned and smiled at me, a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. The moon that lingered over he wore a frown. How could he know we two were so in love? The whole darn world seemed upside down. The streets of town were paved with stars. It was such a romantic affair. And as we kissed and
You still got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. You'll have to come back because that was too good. Shall we move up an era?
Yeah.
Any questions so far? Yeah. Oh, no? Anything at all? Okay. Enough for the questions. Was there a question? Go ahead, scream it out.
How long have you all been playing music?
Oh, that's good to know.
What was it?
How long have we all played? So you want to start with, since you've only been playing 7 years? Oh, since you were 7 years old. Yeah, okay. Just kidding.
7 years.
Yeah. And you started on guitar?
I started on guitar. I think maybe my first instrument was, I think I got a ukulele, then I got a guitar, but I started at 7 on guitar, yeah. And I was able to get some good lessons from some real great teachers, and probably the teacher that really turned me around, and he happened to move down to Monterey. I'm from Monterey. Was a guy named Dale Ramey, and he took Joe Pass, who's one of the prominent guitar players of all time, his place on George Shearing's gig. So he was really unbelievable, but what was really something about him that you don't see, he was as good of a jazz player as he was a classical guitar player. So he really influenced me and almost became like a father figure to me. I'd go over his house for 4 or 5 hours and he'd just teach me all this stuff, and I just absorbed it. So I was very lucky that he moved down there. And he didn't stay long. He went back up San Francisco, where he always did a bunch of Broadway stuff and film stuff and stuff with the symphony. He was an incredible reader. I've never seen anybody like him. Never have. I think he was one of a kind, really. But he was one of these guys that sort of was behind the scenes, you know. I mean, Joe Pass knew who he was because I studied with Joe and I mentioned him and he said, I know Dale. He's unbelievable. So the best knew who he was, you know. But I was lucky in that respect where I got early on got lessons with one of the best. Yeah.
Rob, when did you start playing?
I'm 55, and I started playing the saxophone in 4th grade. So I've been playing a long time. I can do the math, but it was kind of a cool thing for me. I was lucky enough to go to an elementary school that actually had a band program in 4th and 5th grade. A lot of those programs have been eliminated now, and you don't start till 6th. It was really cool, though. My dad is a self-taught drummer and an industrial arts teacher, and he knows a lot about woodworking and auto mechanics and electricity and all that cool stuff. And so his best friend was a sax player, and they worked out a deal that Eddie gave me an alto saxophone and gave me private lessons all the way up through high school for free in exchange for my dad fixing his car and building him cabinets in his house. So I got, so it was, and they're great friends to this day, and Eddie was just a great influence, and it was just such a treat to have private lessons, you know, all my life, up through high school, yeah. So, and then that was back east in New York. I relocated out here eventually and scored a job at Disneyland, which is great. I get to play my saxophone 5 days a week. It's not always the most creative environment, but I still get to do what I love and play. So it's really cool.
Rick?
I started playing early on, too. I started with guitar, then trumpet, then guitar, then trumpet, and then piano. And when I was 14, I was in a band, 14, something like that, sophomore in high school. And it was 2 guitars, piano, drums, 2 saxes, trumpet, and no bass. And one of my friends says, you know, we really don't need a piano player because all we had was a piano in my parents' living room. We couldn't move it. We couldn't play a gig. We couldn't move the piano. So he said, you know, we really don't need a piano player. We need a bass player. Oh, okay. So I bought a bass. And then a month later, I bought an amp because I didn't realize you had to have both. Actually, I had to save up. So, like all these guys, I've been doing it a long time. And, you know, it was interesting. Just yesterday, I was listening to Dave Grohl. Are you guys familiar with him? The guitar singer from Foo Fighters. And he had a story very similar. He just learned the instruments. He just wanted to learn how to play. So he'd lock himself up in his room and play. And he had a story similar to mine where he started writing songs and he goes, well, I've got a guitar part and I've got a piano part, but how do I do them at the same time? And I did the same thing. It was really weird. Back then, the high technology was cassette recorders. Have you even seen cassettes, you guys, maybe? Yeah. So my family had one cassette recorder and one cassette player. So I'd record into one cassette machine, then I'd take that tape and I'd put it in another cassette machine and play it back through the family stereo system and then record the next part. And then I'd take that tape with the 2 and I'd put it on and kind of do it again. And so I'd play piano or guitar or something like that and mumble through some lyrics. And thank God those tapes are gone. It was pretty horrible. But the point of it is that whatever you guys do, I think on this, music's a very creative outlet for all of us, as acting or anything else can be. And you guys have amazing technology now to take advantage of that we didn't have. So avail yourself of it. Use the technology. Be creative.
Hi.
Hi, Gordon.
I'm not used to speaking on a mic, so can you hear me?
You're doing good.
Okay.
Excellent.
My first instrument was piano. I started probably 8, and then digging around in my brother's closet, I found a snare drum.
Uh-oh.
So then I wanted to play the drums. So I took his snare drum. He'd stopped playing. So I started taking lessons, and probably in 6th grade, middle school, I auditioned for band, but there was way too many drummers. But for some odd reason, I could read music, drum music. They had something from Man of La Mancha, and everybody tried out, and I was the only one they picked to play because But I started taking lessons. I had a private teacher, and all the way through junior high and into high school. Probably my turning point was I love jazz, and we grew up in the South Bay, and I would go to the Lighthouse constantly. I would ride my bike to see Shelly Mann's Quartet on Sunday or Tom Scott's Sextet with John Guerin. And one night I talked my parents into taking me to Shelley's Manhole in Hollywood. And that night I didn't even know who was playing, but it turned out Joe Henderson was playing, alternating sets with Shelly Mann and his men. Well, my parents didn't really stick around. They said, Junior, stay here, don't leave the premises. We're going to go for a walk. So I sat through Joe Henderson and Shelly Mann, and then when it was over, my dad asked me if I wanted to meet Shelly Mann, and I said, yes, I want to meet Shelly Mann. I want to take lessons with Shelly Mann.
Tell him where you play.
Oh, Shelly Mann is a drummer. He had a jazz club in his own group. It was Shelly Mann and his men. But he was also a famous studio drummer. He played on TV shows and movies and had his own jazz club. Just was the guy then. So I asked him, I said, Mr. Mann, Shelly, I said, can you give me drum lessons? He said, sorry, kid, I'm too busy. And I was kind of disappointed. Then he said, well, call Murray Spivak. And I said, who's that? I said, how do I reach him? He said, call Bob at Pro Drum. He'll give you the number. So it turned out Murray Spivak was sort of the snare drum teacher to the stars. He was Louis Belson's teacher and all the studio drummers in Hollywood. But he had a day job. He was a sound man for the studios. He had won Academy Awards. He had done The Sound of Music and West Side Story, the original King Kong. But yet he had this love of teaching drums, and he was my main inspiration for playing the drums. And I studied with him for about 3-4 years, but I also studied other instruments like timpani and mallets in his studio, and met a lot of famous guys there, and that inspired me to keep playing. And then after high school, went to Long Beach State and met Tom and Mike. And, been playing since I was 10. I'm 60, so it's 50 years out in the pits here playing. So anyways, takes a lot of hard work and practice and, just sticking with it. But I think nowadays it's a little different. You have to be more versatile. Most young guys I meet now sing, write music, are computer whizzes. They play many instruments, and it's a different style than what we grew up with, playing like one instrument. But I'm just glad to be here, and thank you.
Hey, Gordon. I started, the first instrument I held because there was a show on TV called Lawrence Welk. There was a guy who came around the neighborhood with an accordion. And so I actually, somewhere my parents have a picture of me holding an accordion. Oh, yeah. And fortunately, that didn't work out. So anyway, I decided I wanted to play the clarinet, because Benny Goodman and all those people were really popular. So my dad, who wanted me to play baseball, he said, he finally gave in. And so we rented a clarinet, and we brought it home. And my parents didn't play anything. So the clarinet comes in like four different parts to the clarinet. And we didn't know how to put it together. So we opened the case, and we had all the different parts of the clarinet on the living room floor. And my dad was trying to figure out which one went where. And so he went and got a Benny Goodman record And so we figured it out. So that's like, oh, the bell goes down here. We did this and great. But then it had and you won't know what this is, but to protect the reed, there's a thing called a mouthpiece cap. And we couldn't see where the mouthpiece cap went. And so my first experience in playing the clarinet was with the mouthpiece cap on. Because it was there. Yeah, it is. And anyway, when I came here, in 60, oh boy, well, I was playing at what's it's called Dwyer now. It's just Huntington Beach Intermediate. I was playing saxophone and clarinet, and then my first year here I played clarinet in the concert band, and then I played alto saxophone in the jazz band, and then I think I just played alto saxophone and clarinet when I was here, and then I got my tenor later on. So then I learned to play piano. I do mostly writing. That's what my thing is. I love to write music. I just love TomKubis.com, and that's where I kind of sell all my stuff. And I've always done it. I've always had this fascination with it, and it's just something that it's just a big part of me. So that's what I've been. But I've been doing it forever too, as well. So enough about me. Enough about the accordion. Yeah, no, you can forget about that. No, we're not going to do that. Shall we bebop?
Let's do.
Okay. Remember I said about the Dixieland people who hated the swing people? And I remember that era. And then there's a whole bunch of people who played the swing era music, which was, we were playing in the mood or that kind of stuff. There was a whole bunch of people who rebelled against that. That was the next step. And where you would play that's very swingy kind of stuff. They decided that they needed to play more notes and get more complicated with harmonies, and so they came up with this music called bebop. And there was a guy named Charlie Parker. Who were the Dizzy Gillespie? Thelonious Monk, all these great bebop players, and they wanted to this was music that you couldn't dance to, and that's why all the swing era people hated this. This was something completely different, but it was more for the people to listen to. Unfortunately, people couldn't figure out what was going on, and bebop died a violent death in some ways, or many of the people who played bebop did, but that's a whole other story for another day.
Part of that was they took the dance floors out.
Oh, he says part of that is because they took the dance floors out?
Yeah. In New York City, at one point, they put what they called a cabaret tax on the clubs. So if you had a dance floor and people could dance, you had a tax. And the club owners didn't want to pay that, so they took the dance floors out. And then the musicians just started playing more for themselves because they didn't have to play for the dancers anymore.
You heard it here first. What are we going to play? Confirmation, yeah, I don't, you know it?
Yeah, we've got the book here, too.
You got a book?
Although you two would have to share. Well, here. Oh, actually, you don't need here.
You got confirmation?
He doesn't need the drum book, so is that enough?
Okay.
And it's the very first chart.
Oh, it's the very first chart. Okay, all right.
I'm good.
You're good?
By the way, this is a great advantage to learning how to read in case these situations come up where you go, I don't know that tune.
Well, this was my idea because when we're talking about Charlie Parker and bebop, one of the things I wanted to try to do for all of you this afternoon is basically the format that we've been following here is Tom counts the tune off, we play the melody, the part of the music that somebody composed and wrote down, and then after the melody is stated, that's when the fun begins and we get to improvise. So what you're hearing is something we're spontaneously creating and making up for you, right? So what I want to do for my portion of this song is instead of launching into my own improvised solo, I wanted to try to play as accurately as I can a transcribed solo that Charlie Parker played. So what has happened over the years is all these masters, jazz masters, play these great solos and they're recorded, and then people take the time to write down note for note what's on the recording, and they put it in books, study books. So if you're a trumpet player and you want to sound like Miles Davis, you can go to the music store, go online, and order a book of Miles Davis transcribed solos, and play them and learn them and steal his licks and incorporate them into your own solos. Okay, so this thing really moves along and it's wild and crazy. So after I play the melody, I'm going to quickly yell out solo, and it's not me soloing. What you're hearing is what Charlie Parker spontaneously created in a recording studio probably in the early 50s, right in front of a microphone. So he heard something in his head, and a split second later, he played it out of his horn. Pretty amazing stuff. So here we go with Confirmation.
Just to let you know, this is an old Charlie Parker tune. Because there are no new Charlie Parker tunes. Okay.
Okay, here we go. So there's I don't know, at least two.
By the way, you're playing this on the alto saxophone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the alto. What I had been playing is the tenor. The alto's a little smaller. The alto, there's 4 basic saxophones used in most musical settings and school settings: soprano, alto, tenor, baritone. They respectively get longer and can play lower in pitch. So Charlie Parker played the alto. So there's a couple of transcribed solos, and then we can launch into somebody else and
Okay.
solo, and I'll pick up the note.
All right.
All right. How fast do we want to try?
That's your fingers.
1, 2, 1, 2,
Roberti, how about that? That was hard to do on the alto saxophone. Wow.
We have some drummers in here, don't we? A few drummers. Did you guys notice that drum solo in particular? How beautiful it was, and how he was referencing the melody of the song. I mean, it's a percussive instrument. It can't play melody lines, but that's one of the cool things that you need to know as a drummer. Learn the melody, learn the song, learn the shape of the line, and you can incorporate that into a solo, and it's beautiful.
And his hat never came off, which is really extremely important. Where's Anthony? Anthony? All right, come out here. Now, we've never done this. We've never worked with Anthony before. This is our big chance. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony. I think we probably all have different answers to that because it's a music that we have to play all styles of music. We can't just play one style of music, and there's no reason to because we all enjoy playing a lot of different styles. As far as playing jazz, my end of it, I'll just tell you my part of it. I taught at Golden West College for 35 years, and it was such a wonderful schedule that I could go and play, still make money during the day teaching. I had jazz classes over there. So I could make money, doing that, and then playing, and then doing gigs on the weekend and stuff. And then, like I said, I got really into writing music and selling it. So I have a website, which high schools and colleges they buy that kind of music. So I can stay kind of active in it somewhat. These guys are much more active in it than I am. As far as my writing is kind of what I do. So I'm just like I've tried to play with these incredible musicians, but that's my end of it. Mike over here, and I don't know if I want to speak for Mike, but he does a lot of musical theater work because he can play banjo, he can play mandolin, he can play all kinds of different styles. And so, like he did The Lion King in Los Angeles, where he played a variety of different instruments, and because he can read, so he gets a lot of work doing that. Rob Verdi kind of did a similar thing that I did originally, was working at Disneyland. In fact, Rob took my job. Rob actually took my job away from me. He did. He did. I know.
But the bottom line is, as Tom was saying, you have to supplement your income in some way. There aren't too many jazz musicians that can make a full-time living just doing what they love, and specifically playing that. So whether it's playing shows or teaching or other types of hopefully music-related jobs, you usually have to fall into something like that.
Yeah, in some ways, well, it's actually been a great instrument for me because everyone needs a bass player.
That's correct.
And there was a band I used to listen to out of San Francisco named Cold Blood.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They were great.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like Tower of Power in that sort of era. Right, Lydia Pence was the singer. And I remember reading an interview with the bass player in Guitar Player magazine back in the 70s, and he said, my dad told me that if you're a good bass player, you'll always work. And it's still kind of true today, So for me, yeah, I studied classically. Well, that's, a lot of times. I studied classically also, so I went to Cal State Sacramento, got a bachelor's from there. Then I went to Eastman School of Music, got a master's there. But then I also, at Eastman, they had a real great jazz program, and I started learning more there. But I was also playing in bands that were playing funk and top 40, classical gigs, all kinds of stuff. So I played shows, Broadway musicals and all that. So I got a well-rounded education as a bassist, playing different styles. And so now it's still the same thing. I'll play for like The Simpsons or Family Guy, TV shows like that. Or for years there was a show, Jag. I played in that orchestra. I'll play in the Tom Kubis Big Band. Yes. Wow. Imagine. So I have various gigs, but I also teach. So it's a little bit of this and that, everything.
I think one thing along with that, and I think we can all kind of share this, we all had the same experience, is that we went on, all of us, to college, and actually and you never know what kind of what kind of music department you're going to run into, but I think all of us here have had just the most incredible experience, and going on to college was probably one of the best things that we did. So I really encourage it. You just never know what's going to happen. You may get involved in some amazing program that's going to change your life. It did mine. It did Mike's. And you went to, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to college?
Oh, me, Cal State Sacramento.
Cal State Sacramento. Where'd you go?
Arizona State.
Arizona State. In Long Beach State here. So it's very important that you do that, because there's just kind of horizons that you'll never realize until you get there.
Let me say one last thing.
Yeah.
You know, also what we were saying, dedicated jazz musicians, it's like being a dedicated Shakespeare actor. You know, you're going to work a few times a year doing what you love. So, you know, if you're a Shakespeare actor, learn also how to do a reality show or something. I don't know. But have you guys heard Joey Alexander, the pianist? Yeah, you should. If you haven't heard him, you should check him out. He was on the Grammys. He was featured. I think he's 12 years old or something. Maybe he's 13 now. But he's amazing, and he'll be one of the jazz greats. But he's one of the handful.
All right. Did you figure it out?
I did.
Okay.
This will probably take us home.
Yes.
Okay.
Take us home, buddy.
All right, I'm going to do a song called Dust My Broom. It's a shuffle in E.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I get up 2 in the morning. these great musicians.
Thank you. Yeah, Anthony. Yeah, man.
And a great hand for Tom Kubis, okay? You know, Tom has been such a supporter of this program from day one. I always remember him being backstage when Cameron Cornell was playing and say, wow, that Cameron. And then the next year, it would be someone else. And when Austin was playing and Zach Cohen was playing, he'd say, wow, that Austin, wow, that Zach, wow, that Anthony. And right now, he'll be saying the same thing about you guys when he's backstage. So we got one. They're going to be here tomorrow night. If some of you want to come back and hear some more of this stuff, it'll be the junior and seniors' turn to hear this. But if you enjoyed what you're hearing, I know Atreyu's coming back. And it was good. So thank you, guys. One more round of applause. Yay!
Hey, one quick question. What was that type of song called? A blues. What was the first song we played today? It was a blues, in B flat. When Nicole came out and sang Route 66, what was that? Blues. There you go. Okay.
Theme here. Yeah. Thank you all.